is Lloyd Smith, and he is our one and only speaker. And as Mary already mentioned, that his speech will take 5 to 7 minutes. For tonight's speech, Lloyd will present a considerably revised version of a speech he did, apparently, 2 or 3 years ago. Why, he says? Because it fits today's events very well. In Project 1, the speech to inform from the Advanced Communication Series manual, Speaking to Inform, is Lloyd Smith, and he's, as Mary already mentioned, that his topic is the most dangerous job. Lloyd.
Here's a trick question that you'll almost certainly get wrong. If I were to ask you, of all of the federal government's employees, about 2.8 million civilians and about 1.8 million military personnel, who has the most dangerous job? The odds are you'd say something like maybe a Navy SEAL, perhaps, a test pilot, possibly an undercover narcotics agent. If you're thinking along those lines, you're dead wrong. By far, the most dangerous job that any federal employee has is President of the United States. Sounds unlikely, but think about this. There are a lot of dates in this speech, so I have a card. In 1835, President Andrew Jackson was walking through the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol when a deranged man stepped out from behind a pillar, pointed 2 pistols at him, and pulled the triggers from about 5 feet away. Incredibly, both guns misfired, and Jackson beat the man unconscious with his heavy walking stick. The guy could never explain why he had attacked the president. In 1864, President Abraham Lincoln was riding a horse alone and unguarded from the White House to an army camp where he liked to spend the night sometimes looking at maps and reading battle reports. Somebody took a shot at him with a rifle from the forest. The bullet put a hole in his famous stovepipe hat, less than an inch above the top of his skull. Nobody was ever arrested for that attempted murder. About a year later, in 1865, Lincoln was shot and killed by John Wilkes Booth in Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. Booth was actually the leader of a conspiracy that had intended to kill Lincoln, the Vice President, and the Secretaries of War and State on the same night. Their idea was to behead the Union government in order to force a negotiated settlement with the South. In 1881, President James Garfield was walking along a train platform in Washington, D.C. when a deranged man walked up in back of him, shot him twice in the back. He died 11 weeks later of an infection. The guy thought that killing the president would cause him to be nominated as ambassador to France.
Oh my goodness.
In 1901, President William McKinley was standing at a World's Fair in Buffalo, New York, when he was shot twice in the abdomen. He died 8 days later of an infection. The killer was an anarchist who was trying to prove to his fellow anarchists that he was not a government agent who had been sent to infiltrate their movement. In 1933, President-elect Franklin Roosevelt was giving a speech in Miami when a guy in the crowd stood up and fired 5 bullets at him. Roosevelt wasn't hit, but 4 other people in the crowd were injured, and the mayor of Chicago was killed. The man could never explain why he had attacked the president. In 1950, President Harry Truman was living across the street in the Blair House, across from the White House, while the White House was being renovated. 2 Puerto Rican terrorists in a pro-independence group decided to attack him and kill him. There was a gun battle outside of the Blair House, and a White House security guard and one of the attackers was killed, and the other attacker and another White House guard were seriously injured. President Truman watched the entire gunfight from leaning out a second-story window, shouting obscenities at the attackers. In 1960, President-elect John Kennedy was living in Miami Beach before he went to Washington, D.C. to move into the White House. A deranged former postman from New Jersey built a car bomb out of 50 sticks of dynamite and drove to Miami Beach, was parked right in back of Kennedy's limousine, intending to blow him up. But when Kennedy came out of the house, he had his small children with him, and the guy changed his mind. Then he went home and told his neighbors what he had done, and he was arrested. He could never explain why he wanted to blow up Kennedy. In 1963, Kennedy was actually shot and killed by Lee Harvey Oswald in Dallas, Texas. Oswald also wounded the governor of Texas seriously in that same shooting. Oswald never said what his motive was, and he himself was killed 2 days later, but he had an extremely fraught life full of violent episodes. In 1975, one of the nicest guys who's ever been president, Gerald Ford, was leaving the California State Capitol in Sacramento when one of Charles Manson's followers, Lynette Squeaky Fromm, pulled a gun on him from about 6 feet away. Luckily, an alert Secret Service agent saw her and grabbed the gun before she could pull the trigger. She refused to say at her trial why she had shot at Gerald Ford. 3 weeks later, a woman named Sarah Jane Moore also shot at Ford, this time in San Francisco as he was leaving a speech. The bullet missed the president and hit the wall and back and missed him by about a foot. And she at her trial said, I had a good reason for doing it, but she wouldn't say what the reason was. In 1981, President Ronald Reagan was leaving a speech in Washington, D.C., and I can't remember his first name. John Hinckley Jr. shot Reagan and 3 other people, wounding all of them seriously. Reagan came very close to dying of the internal bleeding after that. Hinckley was trying to show the actress Jodie Foster that his love for her was genuine by killing the president.
Yeah.
In addition to those attacks, there have been 3 presidential candidates who were shot and wounded. In 1912, Theodore Roosevelt was shot in the chest but refused to go to the hospital until he finished the speech he was delivering. Not known for his good judgment, obviously. In 1968, Robert Kennedy was shot and killed in Los Angeles just a short while after winning the California primary. In 1972, a deranged guy named Arthur Bremer followed Richard Nixon around for a month trying to get close enough to him to shoot him. When he couldn't do that, he drove to a rally for Governor George Wallace of Alabama, who was running a third-party candidate, shot Wallace twice in the abdomen, leaving him paralyzed for life. Think about it. An incredible 12 of our 44 presidents have been the victims of violent attacks while they were on the job. And those attacks resulted in 4 fatalities and 1 near fatality. In addition, 3 presidential candidates have been attacked, resulting in 1 death and 2 serious woundings. No other nation on earth comes anywhere close to subjecting its national leaders to the level of violence that we subject ours to. The men and women who run for president are literally gambling with their lives, and the odds are really not very good. This also explains why it's a bad idea to even joke about killing the president. For example, nobody thinks Donald Trump really intended to tell somebody to kill Hillary Clinton, but there are enough wingnuts and dingbats and deranged weirdos around that somebody might decide to take a shot. After all, it's happened 12 times before. Thank
you, Lloyd. Timer, would you set the timer for 1 minute?